Imagine this for a moment. You are standing in the middle of a battlefield of ideas. On one side, you hear the voices of your faith, the Quran, the Sunnah, the prophets, telling you that there is more to life than what your eyes can see, that there is an unseen world, a divine plan, angels, destiny, and the power of Allah guiding history. On the other side, you hear a very different voice, a voice that says, no, there is nothing beyond what we can touch, measure, or test. No angels, no divine plan. No unseen. History is made only by resources, power, and material causes. This voice is not coming from a single person. It's coming from an entire system, an academic method called the historical critical method, a way of studying history that has quietly become the dominant way history is taught in schools, universities, and media. And without realizing it, even some Muslims have started thinking this way. My dear brothers and sisters, today on Islamic Echoes, I want to take you deep into this system. We will explore how it works, why it's dangerous for a believer, and how it challenges the very first quality Allah mentions about the believers in the Quran, those who believe in the unseen. Stay with me until the end, because if you can understand this, you will see the world with a clearer heart, and you will never fall for the illusion that faith and history must be separate. Let's start with something simple. If you were to walk out into the streets of any country and ask people, do you believe in the unseen? The majority, not just Muslims, but Christians, Jews, Hindus, and even many spiritual people with no organized religion would say yes. They might define it differently, but they believe there is more to life than the physical world yet. In modern academia, there's a method of writing history that acts as if all of that, angels, divine intervention, miracles, is irrelevant. It doesn't necessarily say these things are false, but it treats them as if they have no place in the facts of history. This is the historical critical method. It grew out of an attempt to analyze the Bible critically, to separate myth from fact, but over time, it has become the default way of writing history itself. And here's the problem. It is built on certain philosophical assumptions that are completely at odds with the Islamic worldview. What they assume, without even questioning, one of the biggest assumptions of the historical critical method is this: history only has natural causes. If an empire rose, it's because they had better weapons, more resources, or smarter strategies. If an empire fell, it's because of political mistakes, economic problems, or disease. Notice what's missing: Allah's will. Divine testing, blessings, punishment, miracles. The unseen. In this view, history is like a sealed box. Nothing from outside can enter. No angels, no cadre, no divine help or divine punishment. For a Muslim, this is completely upside down. The Quran is full of stories where Allah intervenes in history, from the parting of the Red Sea for Hazrat Musa, to the birds in the Battle of the Elephant, to the victory at Badr. Remove the unseen from these stories and you strip away their core truth. Now, defenders of this method often say, we're not denying the unseen, we're just being objective. We're just telling history without adding personal belief. But my brothers and sisters, that's not true objectivity. That's a worldview pretending to be neutral. Because even the decision to exclude the unseen is a bias. It's saying, we don't count divine action as a fact. Think about that. They are basically moving Allah's actions from the category of truth to the category of speculation. That is a massive philosophical move, and they want you to accept it without even realizing it. Another issue with this method is the obsession with origins. They believe that if you can explain where something came from in purely natural terms, you've explained it away. For example, they might say, we can trace how this religious practice started in such and such society, so it can't have a divine origin. But that only answers how something started, not why. In Islam, we believe that Allah creates through causes. The fact that something has a physical cause doesn't mean it's not part of the divine plan. Rain falls because of evaporation and condensation, but it is still sent by Allah. There's another subtle but dangerous belief inside the historical critical method. All people and all societies are basically the same. Nobody is truly better than another. At first, that sounds humble. But in reality, it erases the Quranic truth that Allah raises some people in rank because of their taqwa, and that the Ummah of Muhammad is the best nation brought forth. For mankind, if you flatten everyone to be equal in morality, then prophets are no longer seen as divinely chosen. They are just influential leaders or charismatic figures. Their message becomes human wisdom instead of divine revelation, my dear brothers and sisters. Here is the real danger. When Muslims go through universities or read history, books written with this method, they sometimes start doubting their own sacred history. They think Western history is more scientific and objective, so maybe hadith isn't reliable, maybe miracles didn't happen. This is not an accident. This method has been used to slowly push divine history out of people's minds. And when you remove the unseen from your worldview, faith becomes weak. Because faith is built on the unseen, the Quran does not shy away from history. In fact, it tells us over and over to travel the earth and see what happened to the nations before us, but it tells us these stories with a moral, with the divine perspective included. It tells us why nations rose and fell, not just how Pharaoh didn't drown because of bad military strategy, he drowned because he rebelled against Allah. The people of Ad weren't destroyed because of climate change. They were destroyed because of arrogance and sin. When you remove Allah from the story, you don't just lose the meaning, you lose the truth. So what do? If you are a Muslim student, academic, or simply a seeker of truth, you must not accept the historical critical method as the only way to understand history. It's one perspective and a flawed one at that you must challenge its assumptions. Ask the hard questions. Why exclude the unseen from history? Why assume all people are motivated only by self-interest? Why treat divine action as speculation? And you must revive sacred history, the telling of our past with the divine reality included. Teach it to your children. Read the Quran with its historical lessons. Let your heart see both the cause and the purpose, brothers and sisters. If there is one thing to take away today, it's this: the believer's view of history is not closed in a box. It is open to the heavens. We see the hand of Allah in everything, in victory and defeat, in birth and death, in rise and fall. The Quran begins its description of the believers with those who believe in the unseen. If you lose that, you lose the foundation of faith itself. Don't let anyone, not a professor, not a book, not a theory, take that away from you. If today's message opened your eyes to something you hadn't thought about before, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone. Start a conversation. Ask your friends, where is Allah in the way we tell history? Here on Islamic Echoes, we are building a community of believers who see the world with both reason and revelation, with both knowledge and faith. If you're ready to be part of that journey, then subscribe now, turn on the notifications, and help us spread the light, because the world will keep telling history without Allah. It's our job to put him back in the story.